Welcome to Dripping Knowledge and my temporary microphone. We are talking, as you can tell from the title of this video, about the Swartland in South Africa. When you think of South African wine, if you think of South African wine, then it'll obviously come to Stellenbosch, Franschhoek, Walker Bay, things like Pinot Noir, Cabernet Sauvignon, and of course, Pinotage. What I intended when I was first writing this episode, I was going to be writing it about those places and those wines. But then I got more and more intrigued, and I remember how I have been more and more intrigued by the Swartland. And what I'm saying right now is like that part of the recipe that's like, when I was a wide-eyed young girl in Rome, you're like, Jesus, Cindy, just get to the pot roast recipe. So I won't bore you anymore with why I'm interested in it. Let's just do it, shall we? So the Swartland is in the Western Cape of South Africa. It is a very hot, dry area. It has the most over 50-year-old vines per hectare in South Africa. Another way of saying that, there's a lot of old vines that run really deep and give you great complex flavors. For me, the Swartland is like that brother or sister trust fund kid that after high school just decided to buck the system, go their own way, and disappeared for years. But now, when they come back to family dinners, they are highly educated, immensely refined, but oh so rebellious. In 1995, a man named Charles Back tried some co-op wines. These are wines that are grown by a certain winemaker and then sold off to someone else to do something exciting with. So the wines were inexpensive and not exactly memorable. Charles Back tasted a Sauvignon Blanc that he was so surprised could grow in such a hot area that he immediately, so the story goes, put his glass down and drove right up to the piece of land, spoke to the owners, and by the end of that day, he owned the entire estate. That was in 1995. A few years later, Charles Back had replanted everything on that estate except for the Sauvignon Blanc, which is still made to this day. A winemaker named Ibn Saadi came on board. This is really story time here. A winemaker named Ibn Saadi came on board for Charles Back's winemaker. And for the next couple of years, they made some wonderful Swartland wines called Spice Roots. Anyone in Cape Town knows this as a place to go and have like these long family type lunches, liquid lunches. This is back in 1998. Ibn Saadi goes on his own a couple years later. For me, that's when the Swartland revolution really begins, is early 2000s. A bunch of other winemakers come to this land of not so plenty and decide that they're going to plant mostly Shiraz, but also wonderful, exciting grapes not really seen in South Africa. Carignan, Mourvèdre, Cinsault, Grenache, of course a nod to Pinotage, and then white grapes like Marsanne, Roussanne, Viognier, very exciting stuff. What they do is not only take this land that's seen as possible to only grow very basic versions of wine, but the winemakers decide to do it in a natural method. These are wines that are made biodiversely, organically, so little to no pesticides, harvested by hand, no added yeast, no fining agents, and generally no filtering, which back in 2005 wasn't done globally, definitely not done in South Africa, to make natural wine. So 2010, the Swartland Revolution Festival has its first year. So the Swartland Revolution was launched by 5 winemakers to have a weekend of free-flowing wine, where they would do all things related to wine festivals of good wine, great food, or great wine, good food, and then being able to lift the curtain and discuss the battle that the winemaker had to go through to get this year's harvest out. But it was very much to say, look what we're doing here with these natural wines. The thing with natural making wines is that it tastes different, but it also looks very different. And this was one of the reasons it was quite a slow startup. When you're not filtering or fining the wine, you're often left with little particles. So it can be little tiny crystals or little red particles. And this was a turnoff for a lot of people. It was something different. They didn't understand it. So people kind of bugged out about it, and they thought that it was a bunch of whacked out winemakers who had been exposed to too much sun. So the Swartland Revolution was launched by these oversunned winemakers to say, hey, come and try our wine. We're growing it in granite, schist, and alluvial soil, and I dare you not to ask for a third glass. Yeah. So what does it taste like? It varies, of course, from grape to grape and producer to producer, but just to say an overall of the Shiraz from the Swartland it's this wonderful freshness of black fruits, but also violets. And then this spices, with savory notes of meat. I hate the word, but it's mouth-watering to think about it. It's extremely satisfying. All of this to say that Swartland wines are now regionally and internationally acknowledged as a wonderful credit to South African wine. The final Swartland Revolution was in 2015. The final festival's tickets, although no one knew it was the final one at the time, sold out in 2 minutes flat. The organizers of the event later posted, "We have unanimously decided that there will not be another festival. We now want to focus our time and energy on the next phase, the evolution perhaps, of great things in this great region and country of ours. So enjoy a bottle with friends who like heavy rain, heavy kissing, and joy division." It's a beautiful stallion, really. Cheers. Red globules of the red wine within the wine. No, just get it right. So the Swartland Revolution was launched by fine winemakers. Reporting live from my dining room.